Ladies and gentlemen, the New York Knicks are going to the NBA Finals. They're going to play the San Antonio Spurs, and people are making their predictions. People are talking about, hey, this is why the Spurs are going to win. This is why the Knicks are going to win. You know, Knicks in 6, Spurs in 4, whatever it may be. But I've seen a lot of this really, really annoying, honestly, opinion people have about it. I've seen people say the San Antonio Spurs are going to win because, well, the Knicks play in the East. That means they're not even that good because they play in the East, and the East is weak. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't stand when I hear stuff like that. I can't stand when a team gets discredited just because they play in the Eastern Conference. It happens every year in the playoffs. Every year when we get to the finals, well, the Western Conference team's going to win because the West is tougher than the East. It's more competitive. There's more star power. That's what everybody says. Not everybody. A lot of people say every year when we get to the finals, the Western Conference team is going to win strictly because, well, they play in the West, and that's tougher than the East. Which it's ridiculous to me to just discredit the Knicks just because of that. Because of that, that is, first of all, that is a lazy way of thinking. That's a lazy way of thinking, and it's honestly a stupid way of thinking, to be completely honest. People will get on the internet and seriously say the Spurs are going to beat the Knicks in 4, all right? And it's because they play in the East, all right? Despite the fact that the New York Knicks have swept the Philadelphia 76ers. They swept the Cleveland Cavaliers in the conference finals. They're, 12-2 in the playoffs, and the only 2 games that they've lost in the playoffs this year were by 1 point each on C.J. McCollum game winners. Despite the fact they have been on a historically great playoff run, despite the fact that in their last 3 elimination games on the road, ladies and gentlemen, the Knicks beat the Hawks by 50 points. They beat the Sixers in Philly by 30 points. They beat Cleveland in Cleveland by 50 points. They're playing fantastic basketball, but oh, wait a minute. They're playing in the East, so actually, who cares? Who cares? Because they're playing in the East, and the East is weak. That's what some people will say. It's what a lot of people have said, actually. And it's like, wow, that is such a ridiculous thing to think. And you know, I said people say this every year. People say this every year. The Eastern Conference team, oh, they're going to lose because they played in the East, and the East ain't tough. Let's rewind the clock back. Let's talk about some previous finals matchups in this decade. Let's talk about last year. Pacers versus Thunder. Everyone said, oh, the Thunder, they just came out the West. The West is tough. The Pacers, they're an Eastern Conference team. The East is weak. Indiana is going to get swept and the Thunder will have a cakewalk to the championship in the finals. And then that series went to 7 games. It went to 7 games. And Indiana was up at halftime in Game 7. The Thunder barely won that series. They won that series by 1/2 of basketball. And then, if we look back a couple of years ago, it was the Boston Celtics versus the Dallas Mavericks in the playoffs. You had Luka Doncic, who many people thought should have won the MVP that season. You had Kyrie Irving on that Mavericks team. They made it out the West. They were going to play the Boston Celtics in the playoffs, but because Boston played in the East, it didn't matter how good they actually were. They weren't better than the Mavericks. The Boston Celtics, they had a cakewalk through the East. The East isn't tough at all. And then Boston proceeded to dog walk the Mavericks in the finals. They put Dallas on a leash, and they walked them around the block a few times, and they won a championship doing so. That's what happened. And let's look back to 2021 when my Phoenix Suns made the finals. They played the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Bucks won. The Bucks won, and Mikal Bridges has since stated that the Suns players themselves, a lot of them, didn't think that it was going to be a tough series versus the Bucks. They thought, hey, we made it out the West. We're going to go play the Bucks. The Bucks, come on, they're in the East. And yet they proceeded to lose to the Milwaukee Bucks. And now, isn't it kind of ironic in a way? Mikal Bridges, 5 years ago on a Western Conference team, and he himself thought it was going to be a cakewalk to the championship in the finals because, hey, they're playing a team in the East, and the East is weak. And now, here we are 5 years later in 2026. Mikal Bridges is now playing in the finals again, this time on the Eastern Conference side of things. And people are saying his team doesn't have a chance just because they play in the East. It is a ridiculous thing. It's a ridiculous narrative. And, like, if you want to sit there and you want to say, all right, the Spurs will beat the Knicks because of this, that, and the third. Okay, fine. That's all right. Maybe I won't agree with you. But, hey, you've got actual legitimate reasons for why you think the Spurs will beat the Knicks. But if you're going to sit there and just say, oh, it's because they're in the Eastern Conference, that is crazy stupid. That is crazy stupid. It's a stupid thing to say. All right. Again, the Knicks are on a historically great playoff run. The Knicks are not having tough series versus mediocre teams. They are dominating everyone they've played. They have dominated. They have not barely survived an East while playing some mediocre squads. They have beat the brakes off of every team they've played. That is not, oh, they're playing an Eastern Conference. No, they're a really good team. They're a really, really, really good team that definitely can beat the Spurs in the finals. That's what they are. That's what the Knicks are. They are a team that can beat the Spurs in the finals. And this entire Jalen Brunson era of Knicks basketball has been the Knicks doing a whole lot of proving people wrong, proving the doubters wrong. And I won't be surprised if the Knicks do just that in the NBA Finals. I will not be surprised if the Knicks win the NBA championship this season.